Hello everybody and welcome to another instalment of The High Road. I'm your host, Noel C. Blundell, and I'm sitting here with my learned Remstar, Rem Liam Blundell. Hello mate, how are you?
Going good now. Everyone knows me, my nicknames.
Well, they're your childhood, what do you call them? Childhood
Nicknames.
Names of affection.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what your family called you when you was a little tacker running around in your Spider-Man suit and saving the world as little kids always do.
Yeah, and I did a lot of that.
You did.
Still do it.
And your brothers.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, that
We
Spider-Man
shared the
suit,
responsibility.
that Spider-Man suit got the best workout you could ever see because when you took it off, your brother put it on. When he took it off, your other brother took it on, and that just rotated around.
Yeah, we had shifts. We rotated shifts. It was a full rotating roster.
It certainly was. I could never understand how you guys could run around like crazy in a full-on Spider-Man suit at about 4 or 5 years of age in 35 degrees heat. It just got me. I just didn't know how you did that. But you had fun anyway. And luckily enough, you had fun without your feet leaving the ground. So
that's right.
That was a bit of a godsend for me being dad.
And without a screen in front of our face.
And without a screen in front of your face. Have you ever heard of that possibility? I don't think that's possibly, you can even conceive that reality anymore.
Nope, not anymore.
There was no screens then. And the screens were very small, actually. That was when texts just started to arrive, right? So that was early 2000s. But anyway, different now. Anyway,
I'm good.
How's your life?
I'm good. Well,
what's
busy.
happening?
Nothing.
What do you think?
Nothing different.
Okay, nothing different. No, there's lots happening.
Yeah, I mean every week. You always ask like, what's changed? Not much really. Just hustling, grinding, gym work.
As you do.
Just normal
you did
stuff.
Speak about that youth conference you attended.
No, I did attend a youth conference about just people getting together and talking about the mental health crisis of our youth and our young children.
Yeah, great. And what did you come up with there, mate?
Oh, lots of stuff. There was just I got asked questions for almost 2 hours straight.
Yeah.
So that was really good. They got a lot out of it, but they're facing some big challenges.
Yeah,
but I can't help but feel it's a bit designed that way. It's like there's so many people out there wanting to do it, but there's no money in it. Wanting
to do what?
Help the youth with mental health, but they don't know how to do it, and they've got no funding to do it.
Yeah, well, it's it's something that's sort of being explored at the moment. Mental health in youth has been a topic of discussion for quite some time. Youth has been a topic of discussion for quite some time, actually, too, because there is a culture around youth which is usually outside of the normal everyday culture that we live in. And people have been trying to document that and research that and cater to that for a long time. As a part of that, there is mental illness involved in that as well. Other things did pop up in a documentation and studying of the youth culture along the lines of sexual development.
Yep. We should just talk about the youth.
peer pressure and peer support, unemployment, accommodation, support, health, just general health, and of course maternal health for mums that fall pregnant, under the age of 21. Anyway, it is a big area of discovery. Just you want to chat for a minute about the program you suggested?
Yeah, I was sitting down with some workers, volunteers, whatever they do. We all just got around a table and started discussing some ideas that they can come up with or implement. And I gave an idea that was school based because I think targeting schools is one of the most effective ways we can do it. It's convenient. They're all in one area. They're not leaving anything. Because if their friends aren't there, youth aren't likely to do it. But basically, I suggested a program, and I've called it Mind Mates program, and it's when year 11 and year 12s voluntarily sign up to this program, and essentially you spend the better part of the school year with someone in year 7, year 8, or year 9, and you have one-on-ones with them. But this program isn't just like a buddy program. It's a bit further than that. It's about mental health awareness and assessing the situation of our youth so then they can report it to the school, or they can give some general support from an elder or a mentor that's higher along the school rankings, year 12, for example. And I kind of written a lot of notes about it, and I thought it was a really good idea because some of the most fun I had was when I was with a buddy in primary school, like a prep, goes and, partners with a grade 6 or whatever, and they do activities and stuff. That was some of the best fun I had.
Yep.
And I figured that they could recreate that in high school and call it the Mind Mates program because I wanted to propose a program that would be beneficial for year 11s and year 12s do it. They get paid for it, and the incentives go up as the school year goes on. So they do mental health first aid training in it, and then they go spend a better part of the year, say, I don't know, hour a week or hour and a half a week or something.
Well, that'd be good, particularly if the school could arrange for a space to be put aside for like a drop-in centre, like have a mini hub in the school, which provided things like 2-minute noodles and cups of tea and cups of coffee, Milo, things along those lines.
Yeah.
A bit like the breakfast club in primary school.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really good idea. Because
I think that's a great idea, actually. That's a really good initiative. I'd hope that one comes to fruition.
Well, yeah, I feel like there needs to be a bit more outreach because the youth aren't going to come to these organisations.
No, that's why it has to be run and operated by youth.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I think that's important that other youth are doing it because it's, I don't know, it's like a buddy program.
Yeah.
Something a bit more closer to them. They go to the same school.
And a bit more in depth than that because children that are in the stages of adolescence have deeper, meaningful relationships. Yeah?
Yeah.
So therefore you'd want to have someone like-minded to be able to build that relationship with, so you could have conversations around mental health issues and have conversations around home and have conversations around health, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. And I thought it would, I guess, be a bit of a different approach as well because we'd actually be utilising year 11s and year 12s that want to go into welfare as well. They get a bit of early experience, something to put on their resume, a bit of mental health first aid training. Like it's actually something they get out of it as well. And, they get paid for it, so that's a bit more motivating for them. But yeah, just like a mini mentor program.
Actually, it's a great idea, actually, and probably might be worthwhile incorporating a general first aid course as well.
Yeah. And I wanted to, you want to write a little booklet that can be studied and then also have fortnightly debriefings on, with these people and meetings and every second lunchtime catch up, there'll be food and all, just all that type of stuff that could really, I guess, start the initiatives onto other things as well to be another branch of outreach for our troubled youth.
That's a really good little program you come up with there, mate.
Yeah, and I thought Mind Mates program sounded pretty cool.
Yeah,
because it's like because you want to be a mate, really. You want to be general support. You want to be a mate. But you also want to be a mentor, but also have a bit more experience than just a helper. Yep, if that makes sense.
Yes, correct. And something separate from the adults and separate from the administration of your school or wherever you hang out. Yeah. And then there's always a wellbeing officer on each school, of course,
usually, and so they could be head of it, a big part of it. But yeah, that was just something that I just proposed down at the assembly.
That'll be a great initiative. I hope that one gets off the ground, mate, because I think that would go a long way to helping young people out on their journey into adulthood.
Yeah, I can't help but stress how, I wouldn't say bad it's getting, but concerning.
Concerning is a good word.
It's very concerning of our youth, and I can't help but blame really our culture in a way, because our culture kind of perpetuates it in a way, and I think it comes through multiple different outlets. I think music is one, and art is another, and news is another one as well. And I think social media and technology, I think it all comes down from that, because music can shape culture, and music can shape youth.
It does.
And our music nowadays isn't that, I guess, we sing about pretty dark stuff, pretty much, and that's evident. That's evident. So,
well, music has been shaping youth culture for decades upon decades upon decades. Actually, I only last night watched a movie which was a movie-length documentary on the Beatles between 1963 and 1966 and how that changed youth culture. They'd never seen crowds of that size of young people in the streets. They'd never had stadium live shows ever before the Beatles as well. So they had to organise all that and manage the bands, getting in and out through the crowds, manage the crowds. They had to have ambulance and hospitals on hand. One place in Canada, one show of the Beatles in Canada in 1965 had 220 casualties from crowd crushing. And the administration and police forces had never seen anything like that before in their lives. That coined the common phrase of Beatlemania. So it's interesting you were talking about that.
Well, I like talking about it because I do think music is one specific subliminal messaging channel that youth get influenced by.
It does.
It's weird because the most popular app, TikTok, they pretty much set the grounds for music. Like if a song comes up in popularity, it's in every TikTok reel. Therefore, everyone's listening to the full song online. They pretty much set the bar for what the music industry and what hits top 100 usually.
TikTok.
Yes,
I thought that music was becoming a bit of a not so popular.
potentially.
Like, I mean, years ago, I talk years ago. Okay, let's talk like 25 years ago, right? That there was all bands around, like, you know, guitar bands, electric guitar. There was lead guitarist, the rhythm guitarist, the drummer, and usually keyboard, singer, bass player, right? And they would get up and do live music, and that was the basis of music that we knew of during that time, which was set in the culture, right?
Yep.
So, you know, and that started, let's go back as far as the Beatles. You can even go back further to Bill Haley in the comments if you want, Chuck Berry. Okay, that's a bit before my time. But then we come through the 60s and we had all different bands like Creedence Clearwater Revival, Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones, you know, those sort of type of bands right up until to Nirvana, right on to AC/DC. All those bands come together. They was, you know, like 4 or 5 guys getting together and playing a band. I thought today that music is moving away from that. It's now more polished production.
It is.
You know, session musos who are auditioned for parts to playing a band, and people are presenting songs that are written for them, you know, and present that. That's how music's going that way.
Well, that's what I mean, and I don't think it's that creative anymore.
It didn't come out of that grassroots, that organic 5 guys. You know, like In Excess were, you know, with Michael Hutchence and those guys. They were high school buddies, right?
Yeah.
They played in one of the guys' mum's garages when they were 15. The same with the Beatles. They were high school buddies too. They were all 15, met each other. They were playing in sheds and things along those lines. A lot of bands started out like that. Right?
I think, and it was a lot easier, I'd say, to gain traction back then because that was the times.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Everyone was doing it, and if you hit, you know, a streak of gold, you'd make a really good hit. You know, like there were so many little bands that were made, like Racy.
Yep.
Like Racy's a tiny band that was conformed in like 1970s, I think.
Yep.
And they have some great stuff, but that doesn't happen anymore.
Yep.
There's no people that wanting to play instruments or anything.
So would you say it's a dying art?
That's a dying art, but participating in music is a dying art, but the subliminal messages that comes from our polished and lyrics and the type of music the youth listen to as well as normal people like my age, you know, like 20s, it's all a lot different back to what it was.
I think I tend to agree with you. I tend to agree. So where do you reckon it comes from? Because we don't see the bloody rock bands and the...
No.
Do we?
That's dying. And I think it comes from... Oh, that's a really good question.
Where do you think? Just off the top of your head. You're the one that's sort of plugged into the... You know,
where do I think all this new music comes from?
Yeah, where do you think music comes from for you? Because you guys are into the rap, aren't you? You guys sort of are into that. And because rap music come along in the early 2000s with the advent of Eminem.
Yep.
Mr. Marshall Mathers III.
Yeah.
right? And he was a Caucasian fellow that grew up in America, and he spent a lot of his time in African American communities, and he took that musical style on, right? Rap. And it was to communicate a hardship and living in a lower socioeconomic communities in America, and how hard that was, and the hardships of dealing with employment and work and relationships and things along those lines, which developed rap music. Run DMC, I think, was before him.
Yeah, and I think he really changed the music front.
He really changed the youth cultural front.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely, because you can kind of tell, like when Eminem came up, everyone was looking like Eminem, dressing like Eminem. He even rapped about it in one of his songs.
Correct. That's right. And I will say this too, with most rappers that I have studied, and I have looked at a number of rappers with listening to the music that you guys have been listening to through your development, right? Because you guys, when you're little guys, were big Eminem fans, and then you come through that rap type structure, didn't you?
Yeah.
Right, and Hilltop Hoods and things along those lines, right? Now, I love the Hilltop Hoods, the Australian rap band. Now, they've been around for over 20 years too. They are really, really good, right?
But it goes darker than that.
It goes much darker than that.
They rap about, drugs, money.
Yep. Losing their children to divorce and
murder.
Things like that. Yes, that's right.
They
Abortion.
they also rap about really, really terrible abuse of their children, or mainly women too. Like
yes.
Some of the songs out there, it goes both ways actually. Some of the songs that rap about abuse towards men and women are insane.
Yes,
it's crazy.
Yep.
Like there'd be a song out there called I don't know, Boy's a Liar, but that's a song out there.
Yep.
But there's just terrible songs out there that I think paint the wrong picture. That's what I'm trying to say. I think music nowadays is painting the wrong picture towards the youth.
Okay.
And I think it's taken a bit of a dark turn, but maybe that's just a shift. Maybe it's a pendulum. It just swings back and forth.
Maybe, but I don't know. I can't help but think it's been influenced heavily by corporations nowadays.
Yes,
and they for a lot of the live stuff is driven for profiteering and capitalising on as much money as you possibly can, and which is taken away from the creativity of it all. We when I was growing up and as a young fella, we had all those magical, creative, psychedelic recorded pieces that come out. So we had things. This is a bit before my time. We had things like Magical Mystery Tour by the Beatles. Get back to the Beatles. We had Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which was Magical Mystery Tours, and then that was in '68. And then we come through. They were at the forefront of doing mystical stuff. Rolling Stones did some stuff, but from that's come another band, which was a mystical, like progressive rock band, which is still ultimately famous today, and they're called Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
With David Gilmour at the helm on guitar and Roger Waters on vocals, and they really put progressive rock on the map. Still, people listen to Pink Floyd today.
Yeah.
It's like some of their albums are 40 years old.
And it's actual talent.
Yes,
not auto-tune or...
No, none of that.
It's none of that.
No, they didn't have any of that.
I think that's part of it too. It's like the uniqueness of the previous music industry, and I say music because music is everywhere.
Yes, it is.
And music shapes everything.
It does.
And then culture shapes everything. Like the hippie movement shaped everything. That culture was insane. Everyone loved each other.
Yes.
Everyone was listening to like reggae.
That's right.
And all that, and that changed a lot.
And that was such a threat to the standardised contemporary culture
that
it had to be derailed. And that's a whole nother story. But what do you think influences? Where does music come from that influences youth today, mate? What do you think?
Where I think the music comes from?
Yeah, where does it come from? Is it like who just toured recently? Is it Taylor Swift?
They're all touring right now. A lot of the top ones. I'm not sure.
So,
I think part of it's because there's a club. And all the top artists just make music with each other to keep themselves at the top.
Oh, so okay, so they sort of collaborate on.
I think that's what's
things.
happened. Yeah, I think there's this really famous singer, someone, and then there's this other famous singer that's come up, and if they're not rapping about being positive or religious beliefs or something like that, they'll keep them up in their circle because they're getting views and they're making music and
that's
stuff.
right.
I think that's what's happened. It's like just a small group of people's kind of taking the crowd
That's
in a
right.
way. And that happens. It's all normal, all human nature.
Back to Eminem. Eminem is very smart because he was ripped off so much when he went into the music business that he got really clever about it, and he opened up his own recording studio. He did his own productions. He opened up his own legal firm and employed his own solicitors, of which his daughter now has passed her eligibility to practice at the bar, and she now runs the legal system. It's called Shady Legal, actually, and he took over all aspects of the music industry, so he controlled all of it, and hence he would take in artists, and still does to this very day, and nurtures them through his network to give them a lift up. He did that with 50 Cent, he did that with Yellow Wolf, he's done that with a number of artists, and then they do collaborations. Eminem collaborates on his album, and whoever, 50 Cent, Yellow Wolf, whoever will collaborate and do a piece on Eminem's albums.
Yeah.
Not so much back that way because Eminem usually controls the whole show, but he's turned it into a whole industry, right? And he still maintained that rap scenario, and he still has a massive following. Is that right?
Yeah, he does have a big following. I think the music industry kind of went like, correct me if I'm wrong, because I was born in 2000.
Well, we want to talk about the time that's relevant to you and how music has influenced you. This is a good
So
discussion.
like when the Beatles come along, you'd say that like that's when rock kind of come along.
That's when they'd never seen, the world has never seen anything like that. Now there was bands around because the Rolling Stones were floating around about that time, but they were the more harder rock, bad boy, bluesy rock, right? Where the Beatles was the pop culture. Love me do type, I love you, he loves me, we get married and off we go to the sea, that sort of stuff, right? And they were the good boys of rock, right? So that's how that set up that culture. But Beatles, they set the scene for all of this. And it's just took the world by storm.
Yeah, so I'd say that, rock come along then, and rock's been around pretty much all the way up until
57.
I'd say it started dying off like around maybe not. I'd say around the 90s when the 90s rap come in.
That was grunge with players like Nirvana and places like Offspring and guys like that. Yeah.
So maybe 2000s or something.
Nirvana sprung off the ground in 92, I think, and so did Offspring, and they were late 90s and early 2000s, and then went into Blink-182 and stuff like that, yeah?
But during that time, we had a huge rap period.
Yes, we did.
We had like Tupac, we had
absolutely, yes, we did.
Ice Cube, we had all those, and then Eminem, Dr. Dre, 50 Cent, and that was all wicked. That was still pretty unique in my opinion, because what's rap, you know? But now it's kind of turned to electronic, auto-tuned, polished type of stuff, which isn't really talent in my opinion. I mean, sure, people listen to it and it sounds great, but how this has impacted the youth, in my opinion, is the creativity and the culture that comes by consequence of it. Because if you're listening to a song that says, I like cheese and cheese and cheese and cheese is awesome. Yeah, what are you going to do? The youth is going to go and buy cheese.
Correct.
Because you're repeating it. You love the song. That's what happens.
That's the power.
If you say, I love Satan and Satan Satan this, sell my soul and all this stuff or whatever, what do you think is going to happen? It's like you're going to go down a dark path. And I think that's what's happened. It's I think, drugs and alcohol and, heaps of money and,
hedonistic short-term pleasure.
Yeah, and, sleeping with heaps of women and, fuck marriage and all that, excuse my language, all that stuff. What do you think is going to happen?
Yep.
So I think that is definitely having an impact on the youth, and that's just one.
Yep.
I'm not just sounding like some crazy conspiracy theorist. I'm just shooting from the hip here. This is what it seems like.
Well, it was interesting because they brought that up in the documentary I was watching on the Beatles last night, and how that the Beatles music was evil and it was going to corrupt youth. Right, so that's been a common topic since the invention of rock and roll. Right, which started with Bill Haley and the Comets in 1957. Rock Around the Clock.
Oh, so we've had this before then.
Absolutely, this has been a common theme right through all popular music. pop music.
Yeah, because jazz is weird now. No one really listens to jazz.
Well, you've got to be a dedicated sort of a fan of jazz to get into that, because that jazz, it comes from a period of when your grandmother and grandfather were young, adolescents, young people, young adults, right?
Yeah.
Because they were even into their 70s and 80s. They were great jazz fans. They'd chase festivals all around the place. Hall's Gap being one of them, where they go to the jazz festival. Yeah. So they were very, very big fans of it, right? But even again, then it was believed that jazz would negatively influence young people, and potentially introduce them to Satan.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because that type of, like, heavy metal, right? That's been dark since day dot, really, heavy metal. That's rare. And I love some heavy metal bands too. They are really good. They have some moving songs.
Zakk Wylde is my new hero.
Yeah, it's insane. And I love it. But I see, like, where the darkness comes from in that. It kind of has, like, a mood to it in a way. Like, that makes sense.
Yep.
But it's, like, it's everywhere now.
Yes.
It's not just in one genre or anything. It's everywhere. But in saying that, there's still a huge thirst for positive songs, talking about, rejecting Satan, turning to religion, hard-working farmers getting ripped off, that type of stuff. Like Oliver Anthony wrote, Rich Men North of Richmond, that just blew up.
Oh, that did too, didn't it? Went crazy. That's right. That was this time last year.
Yeah, and that went insane. So there's still a thirst out there for that, country music, banjo thing, because I love a banjo song.
Well, yes, so do I. I love a bit of banjo too. Well, speaking of music that is speaking out politically, between 68 and 72, we had a whole range of politically motivated songs to stop the Vietnam War, right?
Yeah.
The Vietnam War, when the Americans were in there from 1961 to 1970, was beamed into people's lounge rooms and throughout America, the Western world, every night. What was going on? Some skirmish, some fighting, napalm. That's where the famous girl was running around with all the skin dripping off her because she was burnt by napalm. And that started the protests, and that started the youth culture actually singing songs around stopping that war. That's where Creedence Clearwater Revival come up with their Fortunate Son, about how the rich children weren't being drafted and sent off to Vietnam. Only the poor people were. Hence the song Fortunate Son. And we had...
that's a great song.
We had Buffalo Springfield, and we had Eric Bird and the Animals. They all sung about war. And it created a movement, a protest movement, which actually ultimately stopped the Vietnam War, where the Americans and the Australians withdrew from Vietnam. The Vietnam War stopped, and it was given back to the Vietnamese. That happened. That actually happened, right? And then what also happened to that was we have never seen live war footage beamed into our lounge rooms and during the news hour ever since then, right? So they learnt a couple of things. You don't broadcast what's going on in a war zone into people's lounge rooms on a daily basis, because anyway, you can go and do your own research on that one.
So you talk about Fortunate Son, that song. Is that the It Ain't Me?
It ain't me.
It ain't me.
I ain't no fortunate son.
Yeah, that's it. That's a great song.
That is a great song. It's been covered by many people. Foo Fighters covered it. Screaming Jets covered it. I've even played it in the band myself a couple of times. But anyway, it is a great song, and and they were the songs that underpinned the political movement against war in Southeast Asia in the 70s, and it did change the world. So, music plays a major part, and it has the ability to motivate people no end.
And it doesn't just stop at music either. It's like music can't, there's multiple factors. But the music leads to the celebrities, and the celebrities do the shit they sing about.
And they're the influencers. They influence the young people into either buying, purchasing, or acting in a certain way. And those people, those influencers, those pop stars, rock stars, there you go, there's the word. Those rock stars have been also the catalyst to fashion, food consumption, alcohol consumption, what sort of car you'd like to drive, or that's where the phenomenon around Hennessy brandy come from. Everyone's drinking Hennessy now, Or they were. I don't know if they still do. I don't know. I don't get out to clubs much nowadays, mate. You're probably a better authority on that than me.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you speak about music. It's just not organic anymore, and I wonder I wonder how that's going. I know when you go to.
Well, I wonder what's next.
Well, that'd be very interesting. Back to one point for a second, though. When you go to a nightclub, what are they playing?
They're just playing R&B sing-alongs. Sing-alongs. Chris Brown and some of the pops. Ice Spice and I don't know them. I don't listen to them.
Well, you wouldn't. It's just the background. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah. But I don't listen to these artists anyway.
When you go home or whilst you're
just
there.
in my own time. I listen to it there because that's the only music that's playing. But it's just sing-alongs.
Yep.
And some songs are awesome. There was some good songs when I was growing up. That's good sing-alongs that make you feel good. But it's not like that anymore.
So is it electronically based, digitally based?
Yes.
Or is there a guitar and a drummer and a...
No, not really. In clubs, it's a whole different thing with clubs. They're specifically... The only way I can put it is loud bass music, doof doof.
Yep.
So they'd grab a rock song and then put a doof doof over it. That's the only thing they'd do.
So they're sampling rock songs, are they?
That's the only thing they'd do.
Yep.
They wouldn't have a Spotify playlist up there and play rock, for example, because no one would buy drinks and no one would dance if it was rock.
Okay.
Nowadays, I'd say nowadays. But that's going on in the nightclubs for sure. But I can't. I don't know what's next, but I can't help but feel that music is definitely part of it. But a step before music, it comes down to technology. I had a high school teacher that said to me back in 2018, literally, this kind of made me think wow. He said to me that as each new year sevens come through, high school, first years in high school come through, there is a visual decline in their performance on academic tests.
Why?
Don't know. He just said that to me. He said, I have noticed that new year sevens coming in aren't as smart as the year above them when they were in year seven. That's what he said to me.
Okay.
And he said that my year level was not leaps and bounds, not a massive difference, but was a lot further ahead than the year sevens that are coming in now. And it's interesting because you can even see it visually on how they present themselves. Yes. Because the way my year level dressed, it was just a little bit, Some people would dress a certain way, some people wouldn't. It was relatively the same.
Yep.
More people are dressing that are visually make you think, are you all right at home? You know what I mean? Not following the curriculum rules or not doing what they should's a harsh word, but there's school uniform is a perfect example.
Yep.
And in my year level, if you rebel against a school uniform, you were, not a bad person, but someone who didn't follow the rules, if that makes sense. And you kind of had a bit of a stigma attached to that. More and more that's coming through, and it would generally be associated to troubles at home.
Yeah, okay.
But more and more of that's coming through. And so that was something that the teacher said to me, and I kind of sat down, I was like, wow. And he said it was technology. And I couldn't agree more. I said, the more time on the screens and less time outside is going to have a result in lowering IQ.
Yep.
You're not being stimulated.
That's correct.
But you're being more influenced.
It's debatable. You're not being externally, socially stimulated. You're being internally stimulated. But it depends on what you're going to pursue. And research has just surfaced. I've been reading about this just recently. Has surfaced that potentially we are... What I've been reading about lately is technology underpins evolutionary processes for human beings, right? And the example they give was that man invented fire, and once they learned how to control fire was the technology which then underpinned the evolution of mankind through that period, right? That's the argument. And they're saying that potentially people are spending so much time on screens nowadays. The screen time is the technology which is going to underpin the evolutionary process of humankind to somewhere where we don't really know where that's going to go.
You can almost guess it.
Well, they were saying that also that AI, artificial intelligence, is going to play a role in that too. And with the implementation of that technology in a human's lifestyle, the evolutionary processes that are going to stem from that as a natural consequence is going to take us off in another direction. and it's unstudied where it's going to go. That is correct. In this information I've been studying recently, they were saying that artificial intelligence, as we know it of today, AI, there's nothing artificial about it. They're saying it's actually quite a natural part of our evolutionary process, actually, and we're just going into the next dimension of human evolution.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. It really is, because no one's ever seen this before.
That's correct, but there's always consequences to evolutionary processes, and one of the consequences is of a lot of youth spending time on screens is they lose the ability to interact on a face-to-face basis. They lose the ability to converse verbally. They are losing the ability to read facial micro cue expressions, and they're losing the ability to understand and interpret nonverbal communication, as in body language, between two human beings. So what we're doing is we're actually severing the processes of communication between members of the human race, and we are putting all our efforts and cognitive processing abilities into their technology, being screens, computerizing, things along those lines. And that's how it looks like where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And so that'll be interesting. This is a process that's going to take 3 or 4 generations, but it's certainly on its way by the looks of it, because the amount of people that are walking around on their phones, like let's take for instance when we go to the gym, right? I was at the gym the other day. I think it was about 4 or 5 o'clock, and it was full. Like we're talking 20 people, 25 people in the gym. Now that's a full gym, right? And
where we're from anyway.
Yeah, well, that's right. We're in a small rural town in rural Victoria, but Australia. But I was taking notice because I was looking at something on my phone. Actually, I was swapping podcasts when I was on doing sets, and I happened to look around, and everybody was sitting there on their phone whilst they were having breaks between sets.
Yeah.
Everybody, right? Everybody. Nobody was looking up from their phones. So I actually took time to put my phone down, have a look, and have a bit of an experiment, see if anyone's... And it was true. And you can see this everywhere. You can see it on public transport. You can see it on waiting stations, bus stops. You can see it in restaurants. I went to a restaurant the other day. Where was that? I can't recall. I was in a restaurant the other day, and the entire family was sitting there on their phones. The food had come out, they'd eaten.
I was just thinking that.
They hadn't cleared the
table. Yeah.
And they were, everyone, the father, son, the whole lot. Mum, the lot. I was rather astonished about that. There is a sad aspect to that, and there is an interesting aspect to that.
I was thinking that.
I wonder if someone's studying it. It'd be interesting to study the ramifications of that. Although the process of the change, the evolutionary change seen in human beings as of today might be so minute it might not be able to be measured.
I think that's I think that's more true than what we think.
Yeah, I think so too. But it'd be a very interesting pursuit to go to look at going forward.
But I just wanted to say that. No, I've lost my train of thought.
Well, we're talking about youth, and I think it's going to be a very interesting time for youth. It's going to be very challenging. Because the parameters are moving so fast and it's changing so rapidly, and everyone's got a screen.
Yeah, and that's what I just remember what I was going to say. Schools are kind of combating this in a way. All kids have to put their phone in a box. That was just coming in when I was in my final year of high school, but that's pretty predominant now in every school. And I've spoken to some of the youth through my volunteering, and that's what they say. They say you got to put your phone in the box. But I was thinking what you said about the family at the restaurant. I was thinking that out there. I went to a water station, and there was someone right next to me, filling up their drink bottle, did not say a word.
Yep.
And I didn't say a word either.
Yep.
But when in that moment of none of us saying a word, I was thinking, wow, we live on the same planet, we're social beings, and no one can talk to each other at all. And yeah, it's a bit frightening, but we feed into it.
Yep.
It's not, oh yeah, go out there and do that, face your fears. It's okay, don't worry about it. You know, it's more compassionate. But I think there's a downside to that.
Yep. There is, because we'll stop conversing.
Yeah.
You know, when we were in university, and of course there was in lockdown we were all on at home on TeamViewer on our computers in class, and we had cameras on, stuff like that. Like there's 22 of us in a class, and there was like 4 cameras on.
Yeah.
No one would turn their cameras on, and no one would talk. It was only a handful of mature age students.
You were one of them.
Being one of them. There would be a camera on and be conversing with the lecturer or the professor, and you wouldn't hear a peep out of anyone. Didn't matter how much the professor tried to coax the other people into discussion. So they used to do breakout rooms, and sometimes you'd break out, but people still wouldn't turn their cameras on. You know, so it's an interesting time, challenging times, interesting time. We don't know where that's going to go or how that's going to look. And unfortunately, it has been proven for many, many decades now. We're talking 100 years. Oh, well over 100 years, it's been established that the human beings are social animals. We thrive in social settings. If we're going to lose the ability to socialise, how is that going to impact on our health and well-being?
Yeah, I was thinking, I wonder what the mental health issue was back in 1940, for example. Sorry, that would have been terrible. That was when the war was. But you get my point, where there was no technology. I wonder what actual impact technology had back then. Well, I don't know. I wasn't alive back then.
I've been spending a bit of time with a gentleman on a weekly basis, and as part of a program, and we've been looking at a 20-part documentary on the implementation of the First World War, right? How it come about, the generals and who were there, and Winston Churchill was walking around. I never knew he was involved with the First World War, but he was, because he comes from those elitist families. And anyway, what astonished me about this footage is not only the footage is in excess of 100-year-old, right? And there's very few cars, most people on horseback or marching and things along those lines, is the amount of the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people in the street to see the soldiers marching off to war and to wish them all the very luck. But the amount of people in the street is just astounding. You would never see anything like that anymore. And so there was a real camaraderie then, not only amongst the soldiers, but amongst the individuals who just lived in society, because there was no telephones. And if you wanted to communicate with anybody, you went up there and had to ask them. If you wanted to find if you want to find your way across town from one side of town to the other, you had to ask directions as you went.
Yeah.
Right? So you go for 4 blocks, you'd have to stop, find somebody and say, "Where's this?" And they'd point you in the next direction. That's how you got around. Right? If you wanted to hear a story, it had to be come down through mouth to mouth, right? If you wanted to learn something that was over and above what you learned from the neighbour, you'd go and buy a newspaper.
Or library.
Well, newspapers haven't been around for a long time. Libraries hadn't been around in a great number either. There usually were central libraries, and that's all.
Oh, okay.
See, people didn't start to read until the 15th century, and that was only because the printing press was invented, right? And the first book they printed was the Bible, right? So everyone learnt to read from the Bible, right? That's how much of an influential document it was. But it wasn't freely available until, I'm pretty sure it was about the 15th or 16th century. It wasn't freely available until the printing press was invented. It was actually sacred information to be held within the walls of, institutions of theology or Catholicism, either one. That brought about the protest movement, which brought about the Protestants. That's another story. That was Martin Luther. Anyway, I digress. But it's interesting how we are evolving. People are starting to look at our evolutionary processes and what underpins that. Usually our evolutionary process is underpinned by technology, right? Fire being an example. And in our circumstance today, our evolutionary process is being underpinned by computing and AI. So that is going to be really, really interesting to see where that goes. Yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's really interesting you said that. Because I just, bringing it all back around to youth, what do you have to say about that?
I think youth of course, youth have always been in a difficult situation because they've been trying to work out how to become an adult, how to leave the mindset and existence and the reality of a child, and then move into their adult world. And it seems to move ever so slowly for young people, which is a really difficult situation. They want to break out and do things that they've been watching adults do for many, many, many years and give that a try. But there's also a whole range of responsibilities that's associated to that, which makes it really, really tricky and really, really difficult because, you know, some decisions that young people can make can change their whole life. And if they're not smart decisions, it can impact on their lives negatively. If they are smart decisions, it can impact on their life extremely positively. So it is a very sensitive time. Youth have always struggled, and it has always been hard, I think, for youth. And I think there will be no change to that. I yet to see the impact of people being desocialised, if there is a word. I don't think there is. Let's make that the Noel word of the day, desocialising, right? So that's sort of you lose that ability to socialise and that ability to pick up non-verbal communication cues.
Well, that's very interesting because you just said youth have always struggled.
They have.
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of childhood is struggling. So you learn how to get over challenges. You learn something out of difficult times. You know, be grateful in spite of your suffering.
Yep.
All that stuff. I think it's important for youth to go through hardship so they learn things. That's why we have camps where they have to climb up hills and they have to go through mud and, flying fox to face fears. That is the definition of facing hardship.
Yes.
I think that's very important. Maybe this point of our youth right now is just another way of them to experience some sort of hardship.
Maybe, and usually hardship that has been experienced by societies usually results in positive outcomes. Yeah,
that's right. That's exactly right. But I can't help but feel that there's more of a. Oh, actually, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say there's more of a pushback, but there's more and more people wanting to help the mental health of the youth.
And because I think we can now study and articulate mental health and positives and negatives, and there are steps and strategies available that people can take.
And what I always say is, with one force, there's always an equal and opposite force acting against it. That can be applied anywhere.
Correct.
The more one force is the declining of mental health youth. But equal and opposite force of that is more and more people wanting to do something about it. And that's how I think of it.
Yeah, and we can't underestimate the future of what's going to happen, particularly with the implementation of this new technology, e.g. computing and AI, because that has the potential to take us into a evolutionary process or an evolutionary situation never seen before, never sight unseen. And, there's been a discussion around the advances in medication, advances in health, things along those lines. But with every positive comes a negative, because that's the simple yin and yang of everything that we see.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
We see. So, there will be negative manifestations as well. And that may be in the form of increased depression, increased anxiety, increased things along those lines, which, that stuff is heavily associated with socialising and the ability for humans to socialise because they're a social being. So that will be interesting to have a look at. Be something study going moving forward, particularly for those students who are studying psychology like we did.
Yeah, I want to wrap up by saying this. Obviously, there's multiple factors that impact the youth.
Absolutely.
We were just speaking on a few of them.
Yep.
Obviously home environment's a massive one.
Oh, absolutely.
Technology we spoke about. Music's another one. But
genetics, families, history. Absolutely.
So there's a lot out there that all comes into play, but technology has been one of the biggest factors that's contributed to this.
And it will continue to do so.
Yes.
Even when we have the likes of Mr. Elon Musk working tirelessly on the neural net, so he's looking at discovering the ability to integrate your cognitive ability, your mindset, your brain, your physical grey matter brain, with the internet.
Yep.
Through a neural net, which is I've
seen that.
Yeah, a net of it's like a
search engine.
It's like a neural net that with probes on your brain, so you can actually think. When you think, you're actually thinking as part of the internet. Your brain and you become a node in the internet. So, look, wow, Weezer. That's, that's got some...
Are you even human if that happens?
Well, they say once anything is injected into you or put into you that is man-made, you instantly become what has been termed a cyborg.
Oh, really?
Yes. So a lot of people get around with prosthetics now, fake hips, fake knees, things along those lines. So are those people already enhanced?
True.
I'd say they are.
Yeah.
That's probably a topic for another discussion. Mate, rounding that up, well done on attending that youth conference, and well done on coming up with that framework for the was it the Mate Mentor
program? Mind
Mates program. That is fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that. Getting off the ground and have a look at that.
Could call it Triple M, Mind Mates Mentoring.
Well, yeah, it's got a bit of a ring to it. Yeah. Triple M. I've heard that somewhere before. Hey, anyway, thank you very much. You can find us on all our socials. If you found today's discussion interesting and wanted to ask a question or have sort of any input or would like us to speak to something you have in mind, please reach out. We can be found on Facebook and we can be found on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Mate, would you like to say anything else to round that up, or you want to finish that up with anything?
I think that's everything. I've always wanted to speak about the music and the influence that it has on the youth, because I think it's very important. Like, I meet that many people that are pretty much have very similar characteristics and listen to the same music.
Yep.
And that could just be by coincidence. I doubt it, but anyway, yeah. So it was really good that we got to speak about that. I really like talking about it. So
that's fantastic, mate. You take care, and for all of you out there, you take care, and we'll be seeing you soon in another installment of The High Road. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.